The difference between a series of unfortunate events and all the wrong questions is the difference between Gothic literature and noir literature. What is that difference? In Gothic literature, people are hopeless and lonely, wandering around a landscape, wondering at the sinister mysteries engulfing them. And in noir literature, sometimes they have a drink in their hands while they're doing that. In All the Wrong Questions, they're drinking coffee. The femme fatale Ellington Faint drinks coffee. Lemony Snicket has never had coffee before, and he's nervous about it. And over the course of the 4-book series, he goes from dreading coffee and being afraid of it to needing a cup of coffee before he does something. So it's something of a stand-in for the chemical inducements that can lace a noir book, but it's also something, I think, for his loss of innocence, and then he goes from not understanding why anyone would drink anything bitter to wondering why people don't drink bitter things all the time. Well, in a noir plotline, a detective is called upon to investigate something. He gets interested in it, and then he's told to lay off the case, and he realizes that the case he was told to investigate is far different from what he was originally led to believe, and soon he's finding his own moral path and trying to figure out a case that he's maybe the only one who's concerned about the truth. And that to me feels like the journey of childhood, that you have many authority figures telling you that the world is one way and you begin to suspect that the world is another way, and your own mind and your own morality are guiding you on this path in a world where everyone else seems lost. That feels like childhood to me. I think the basic questions you ask yourself as a child, what are people doing? Why are we thinking about this and not that? I think those questions never get answered in adulthood. You learn that it's rude to ask them, and you learn that what you really should do is get up and go to work. But they're never answered, so they continue to haunt me. And I think they haunt everybody. I think that people are different degrees of dishonest about it. My own childhood was crisis-free. If you're grading on a curve. But I was still something of a brooding child, and so my own memories of brooding over injustice and mystery certainly lace this. But then also I just read a lot of noir. I read a lot of Raymond Chandler, and a lot of Dashiell Hammett, and a lot of more and more obscure noir authors, and some of the newer ones, Kem Nunn and Megan Abbott, and tried to think about how a world of vice and corruption could be overlaid onto the genre of children's literature. That seemed interesting to me. When I started a series of unfortunate events, I didn't see any Gothic literature happening in children's literature, and I thought, this is something I can do. This is something that interests me. How do we take Wandering the Moors, missing Cathy, and being Heathcliff, and how can we take that and turn it to a world of childhood when, for me, it felt like the same thing. It was made of the same stuff. And it was a similar process in noir. I read books that I found interesting that weren't for children, and I tried to dream up a way in which they matched the world of childhood that felt like, it felt like already was connected in my head, and I had to put it down on paper. But I guess that's kind of the gig of being a writer. It's already connected in your head, and you got to put it down on paper. I remember one of the earliest threads with my child is that we were listening to the song We Are the Robots by Kraftwerk, and he said, "Are they really robots?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Are they pretending to be robots?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Are the Beatles pretending to be Beatles?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Are they pretending to be Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band?" And I suddenly thought, why do groups of musicians name themselves things that they aren't? How did that happen? How did people say, like, we're just going to call ourselves Frankie Goes to Hollywood, or, System of a Down, even though that doesn't make any sense. We can't be that at all. And I thought, that's a strange thing, and I realized that even on the simplest of pop culture questions, I had no explanation for everything, for anything at all. What a sad and inept parent I am. Good thing I abandoned my child to come here to the LA Times Book Festival. He'll be fine. Box of cereal.